Everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Dylan James. I'm a mindset coach that loves to focus on relationships. And today we're going to talk about how your romantic relationship is the physical externalized representation of the relationship you have with yourself. I'm going to include three topics in this, which includes your emotions, your beliefs, as well as how you are responding to reality in the example you're setting. Now, in yesterday's video, I was talking about how to move on from heartbreak and detach in as little as 2 to 3 weeks. And I saw some people commenting, talking about how to process their emotions and what that actually looks like. So I'm going to start off with emotions today because it is not like you are supposed to be happy 24/7. I really don't subscribe to the idea of toxic positivity. We want to form a healthy relationship with our emotions because there are certain moments where our emotions are going to allow for us to show up and express them in a regulated way that sets an example that we're not okay with something, that we're hurt by something, and for somebody else to actually understand us, see us, and work through problems with us. And so, some beliefs that go into this, I think foundationally, are normalizing the experience of generally being seen. So, if you grew up in an environment where your emotions were dismissed, people weren't paying attention to you, they didn't care about how their actions impacted you, then at a core level, we've normalized not mattering, not feeling seen, not feeling heard, and not feeling in general like our emotions matter. Over time, that usually causes us to suppress our emotions, which leads to a really dysregulated place. So I think the first key here is to really build up a belief system where we normalize being seen, heard, honored, people understanding us, listening to us, honoring our emotions, and taking ownership and accountability for their actions. The other component to this is building a healthy relationship with yourself and your ability to validate and regulate your emotions. So I'm starting to normalize the experience of feeling my emotions. I'm starting to understand how my emotions impact me. I'm feeling safe enough to begin to process my emotions. I'm learning new skills for how to regulate my emotions in a safe way. I'm learning how to express my emotions in a regulated manner. I'm realizing that each of my emotions are valid. It's becoming easier for me to validate my emotions and respond appropriately. So essentially, we need to get to a place where we normalize being able to feel the emotions that we're having. And this actually, in my opinion, causes you to exist in a more regulated state. So the goal here is not to be happy 24/7, but I will say when you work through these things, you're dominantly in a regulated space, a stable place. And this is what I've talked about in content in the past. When it comes to creating something, your first goal should be to cultivate stability within your life, mental and emotional stability. Now, what that allows for you to do is to go into different emotional states like sadness, anger, frustration, happiness, love, and experience them in a constructive manner, but then balance back into a space where you're regulated, not overly attached, and not projecting emotions in a destructive way because you've actually taken the time to feel them and communicate them constructively. Now, how does this relate to a relationship? Well, in order to create a sustainable relationship, and when we're looking at the dynamics that we have within our life, if we have cut off our ability to feel our emotions, if we ignore our emotions, if we dismiss our emotions, if we suppress our emotions, then we are going to be very susceptible to accepting that same treatment from another person in return. Now, when I'm talking about these topics, that doesn't mean you take ownership or accountability for other people's actions. What this really allows for you to do is to critically assess and see if you have been showing up and accepting things or setting an example that has caused you to remain within dynamics or entertain things that aren't actually congruent with what you consciously want to experience. All right. So again, the importance of our emotions is there's going to be certain moments where we get angry. There's going to be certain moments where we're going to be hurt. Obviously, moments where we're happy, where we're sad. And in a relationship, it's a constant growth and evolution. If we are suppressing our emotions because we don't want to create problems, then we're actually robbing the ability to grow with another person. We're typically operating more as a people pleaser. We're accepting things that we don't want to accept, and we're not aware of how their actions may be fully impacting us because we're not being honest with ourselves. This is really important too, to be able to develop a deep emotional connection with another person, because if you're not able to express your emotions in a healthy manner, then you're going to find that you have more surface level relationships or friendships in your life. The second component to this is your belief system. So, what we believe when we're thinking about how our romantic relationship is the physical representation of the relationship we have with ourselves, what that means is we're going to be willing to accept from another person what we believe about ourselves, how we treat ourselves, and what we believe about different areas of our life. To be honest, the quickest way to figure out what you believe is to actually look at your behaviors. So, if you're neglecting your responsibilities, if you do not have any boundaries, you're constantly saying yes to everything, if you're not meeting your wants and needs, if you're not prioritizing yourself, if you're not honoring yourself, if you're not valuing yourself properly or advocating for yourself or holding yourself accountable, then you have cultivated a relationship with yourself where you're going to be more susceptible to accepting that type of treatment from another person because it's already normalized within you. And the trick behind all of this, the really difficult part with all of this is typically, for instance, if you're not prioritizing yourself and you start to get into a relationship and start to over prioritize another person, you get very frustrated because you're waiting for them to show up for you and you're getting frustrated with them not showing up for you. And in that act, you're not prioritizing yourself and you're setting the example that it's okay to not be prioritized. Okay. And this is how dynamics evolve over time. Again, that does not mean that we take responsibility for other people's actions. It's just so that you can critically assess how you've actually been showing up. And there are quite a few beliefs that go into materializing behaviors, especially in relationships. So we may have beliefs regarding how we view and value ourselves, our ability to uphold boundaries, our ability to meet our own wants and needs, normalizing being prioritized, being able to hold ourselves accountable. And then we have the other component to our belief system, which could be beliefs related to men, commitment, relationship dynamics, communication, overcoming problems. And so you have to really critically assess this because maybe you have good beliefs about yourself, like you believe that you deserve to be prioritized, but then when it comes to men or women, you're not able to normalize the experience of being in the relationships that you desire. And maybe you hold beliefs because you've had experiences in the past where men or women didn't prioritize you. So when you get into a relationship, you're automatically manifesting behaviors where you're prioritizing the other person in non-constructive ways and setting the example that you don't need to be prioritized. You're going to always assume that role within the relationship. And so, again, we really set the example in our reality. We show people how to treat us based on what we believe, how we're showing up, and how we're responding to life. And that leads to the last point. When we are looking at how we're responding to things, I was talking about this in a previous video, especially about third parties or competition. You really want to observe the belief system that you have independent of circumstances. So let's say I hold a belief system like I deserve to be prioritized. It's normal for the right men to prioritize me. When somebody comes into your life and tries not to prioritize you, you would not be sitting here frustrated with them or trying to figure out how to get them to prioritize you. And this is where it wouldn't even come into your awareness. You would be able to write the experience off like nothing. You'd be able to brush it off, move forward, and know in general, it's a normal experience for me to be prioritized and for the right men or the right women to prioritize me. Now, this works to your favor in quite a few ways because as you respond as this version of you, you're setting that example. And you now give this person the opportunity to rise up and meet you where you are. Maybe they're used to people prioritizing them. They're used to getting relationships easily. Maybe they're a little bit of a player, so they're used to people being a little bit more easy or desperate for them. When you do not present that way, one, that's going to be a shock to their ego, so they're probably going to chase after you. But two, you're setting a very firm example without internalizing what's going on around you in a very regulated, mature way that people genuinely and generally respect highly. And that's why we're able to create different dynamics with people, even if historically they've shown up differently for others. You are quite literally defining who you are. You're showing up in the world, setting an example. And again, your romantic relationships are the physical representation of the relationship you have with yourself. That's why I've done so much content on valuing yourself properly, why I've said when you get to this end space where you have these beliefs, you're no longer going to give a fuck because it's no how people are showing up or circumstances are showing up aren't going to trigger you. You're not going to internalize them. That's why I've done a lot of content on some things deserve a response, some things don't deserve a response. each case is going to be different because there's a level of context involved with the things that everybody's going through. And so you have to take into consideration where you are and the things that are going on in your life and make sure that you are processing your emotions and you have developed that emotional availability piece, which for myself, what that means is I really dive into my emotions. When I'm sad, I'll put on the saddest music, allow myself to cry it out completely, and then as soon as I'm done, I will do something to regulate my nervous system. If I'm angry, then I will engage in some sort of physical exercise and also listen to music that really allows for me to tap into that emotion. And as soon as I'm done feeling it, I will then again do something to regulate my nervous system. So for things like sadness, I usually take a bath. For things like anger, I usually do breath work or I will take a little bit of a nap because I'm usually tired after whatever it is that I did exercise-wise. And so, again, we want to develop these healthy coping mechanisms to feel our emotions, and that's what allows for you to become emotionally available. You're aware of what you're feeling, and you have the appropriate tools to feel those things. And then, as soon as you're done feeling them, you're able to regulate yourself and bring yourself back to a place of stability. The next thing, again, is we want to make sure we have a healthy, congruent belief system that allows for us to show up and set the proper example for the types of relationships we want to create within our life. And as we're doing it, the last piece is making sure that we're actually embodying that version of ourselves and setting that example regardless of what is showing up. And that is why circumstances don't matter, in my opinion, because we always have a choice with how we're going to organize ourselves, with how we're going to respond to reality, and different responses are going to create different results. So you can create what you want. You don't have to sacrifice yourself. All of your emotions are valid, and we should be getting to a place where we can feel each emotion in a healthy way and also set a very solid example that responds confidently to life. And you know what? Even if sometimes you're not confident, that's okay because that's what real confidence is. Full acceptance of yourself and being able to be your authentic self at all times. So I hope you gathered and gained something from today's video. You took some good notes. I love you all so much. I'll see you later. Have a beautiful day or night wherever you are. Bye.